kachi ni bashichin kia ani da shichi na kidene bashinala tenzades adona shatu del point hori akwa kirchte bashin tourism be adilni so deal zindoles. Let us pray. Vajandole tansan yadelkil. Vajandole zelistan twistan. Vajandole chahalkil hayol kal. Vajandole hashtelki hashjawan. Vajandole natalki nataltsi. Vajandole traditin instani. Kodoye sanarebi hajon ni klingo. Ko ekilwil netole. As ahtelke was the dash ke niklo. The dash was Mizaka Hozho, Nitola Trato, what the Yingo, Illingo. Mahana Hardo, Kedole. In the Bansi case, or in it, Zinigi, one Gilat Ato, like El Che Tahit, Bena Itzo. Elana needs Zinigi, it's at the Yego, Njonogo. A Shanadi Nilsendole, I need edge. Napenas lag. Nini, any, when hit out on his other any. Did a Behane il idole. In the Daho, Nizala Trato at the Yingo. A carja by any Zinigi, needs Zinigi. A yacht echo Hojango Hotelin has you cut. Did a Nizala Trato, your copy jets or the lingo pay. At the yield, don't eat up. Even net obey that or Hojan Benita or Hojan was on. Even ye home. Job by needs and job by National yard ego, be catole, Hojan or let his heart. Even the darts for any Hojan. Hojan Hustling, Hojan Hustling, Hojan Hustling, Hojan Hustling. That Eto here, thank you for being here with us. In many ways, so that we take a strong journey through prayers and songs and stories. That through this process, we build ourselves up and we create the environment in which we live. And we move on this journey of life to protect ourselves from the dangers of the world, as well as to create a path of beauty, harmony, balance. And this writing workshop will be conducted by young Navajos, youth leaders. We have a lot to learn from the young people. In their short lives, they have experienced much, including the COVID-19 that we're dealing with. They have lost loved ones. They've grieved. They've missed their families and have visited their families for many days and months, over a year. So in their short lives, they have experienced hardships. They have experienced pain and all kinds of loneliness, being alone, but yet they're coming out strong, telling us this is how we're making it through. And it's through sharing their writings, some of their approach to artistic expression. In Navajo, we sing songs, and at the top of everything, there's a lyrics that goes, and so it goes. It says at the top, a bluebird sits with beautiful voice. In Navajo, we always in our prayers and everything with having a beautiful voice. Having that voice and developing that voice is so important in the Navajo point of view. And in this case, it may not be from the tip of our tongue, but it's from the tip of our pencils, tip of our fingers, using the keyboard, learning to express ourselves. So let us now turn over this to the welcome address by Ophelia Naz, Navajo Nation First Lady, to be followed immediately by Dottie Lizer, the Navajo Nation Second Lady. Again, thank you and welcome. Let's have fun. First Lady.
Oh, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be such a fun event. Thank you for joining us for Hashne, writing ourselves into Hozho. That's a virtual writing workshop. I'm just going to share with you a few lines that was written by Natalie Prokes from the New York Times. This was from almost a year ago. And she wrote, "The coronavirus has transformed life as we know it. Schools are closed, we're confined to our homes, and the future feels very uncertain. Why write at a time like this? For one, we are living through history. Future historians may look back on the journals, essays, and art that ordinary people are creating now to tell the story of life during the coronavirus. But writing can also be deeply therapeutic. It can be a way to express our fears, hopes, and joys. It can help us make sense of the world and our place in it. Plus, even though school buildings are shuttered, that doesn't mean learning has stopped. Writing can help us reflect on what's happening in our lives and form new ideas." That was what she wrote almost probably 11 months back. And so here we are, almost a year into the pandemic, and we're hosting this this writing workshop. And we know it relates, art, writing, and public health. They all relate to one another. And so we had asked Mr. Rexley Jim and La Casa Rojo, the youth from there, to present this workshop for you all. And, there's a lot of ways that you can do writing projects, whether it's a journal, personal, just short writings, narratives, poetry, photo essays, or you can even do a podcast. But all of those things involve writing. But I just want to encourage everyone to continue to keep writing and sharing your stories. And so thank you to all the presenters. I'm looking forward to the whole agenda. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Yat she Dottie Lizer Yanisha, Kia Ani initially, my discussing Bashishin, but Ani Dashache, Kachini Dashanella. Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here today on the virtual webinar. It seems like it's kind of how we do things these days, so we appreciate you taking your time out of your day to just listen to what we have to share. We've got a lot of good speakers today. But as you know, I'm married to Vice President Myron Lizer, and today it's nice to be here to be able to speak along with First Lady and those attending, for this workshop this afternoon. So we appreciate you guys being here again. Just a little side note, Hozho, the Navajo word Hozho is said to be the most important word in the Navajo language. It can be translated as peace, balance, beauty, and harmony as well. And to be Hozho is to be one with and a part of the world around you. So let's utilize Hozho in this virtual learning today and be your best with everything you do and act in today's learning through the virtual writing workshop. So thank you for being here today. Be safe and strong and remain in prayer as we still go through this pandemic. We need to stay strong. We need to mentally stay strong and spiritually, physically. And so, to continue to wear your mask, continue to pray, and, to continue to stay healthy. One day soon we'll be able to gather together again in these workshops, and it's going to be good to, it's going to be nice to be able to hug one another and just say hello and, greet one another as we've always done in the past. So we look forward to those days, and we just thank you again for being here today. Yeah.
So I believe it's my turn. I'm not too sure who's going to be helping me with the PowerPoint that I sent out, but I'll just get started with my introduction. Yat e shige do shirine she Kyle White in she kia ani nishlin do not otene tatchini bashichin dash chini dashachedo tulhane dashanele these tours najishkis dat nasha. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle White. I am from the Checkerboard Navajo Reservation, and I'm currently living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, majoring in biology. I plan to utilize my studies for food sovereignty research, nutrition and health, public health, and also implementing the use of art therapy and different forms of art into my work. And so let me just share my screen really quick. I also have another person attached to this presentation. Her name is Safon Hardy, but she is not going to be here physically, but a lot of her work will be mentioned in this presentation. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. So my presentation is about artful storytelling. First of all, I want to thank the first and second lady of the Navajo Nation for inviting us, and for Rexley, Jim, Ceci Lewis, and Aaron Shawcow for helping all of us youth leaders by mentoring us and encouraging us to present to our communities. Before I get started, I want to mention a few rules for writing. And so I'll just go down the list. The first rule is ke ninzin, which can be translated in many ways, like be in relationship, building your mind, being respectful, and intentionally writing with your words. The second one, write in your own language or any language, genre, or modality. The third one, ego, be you, write your truth. The fourth one, there are no mistakes. I feel like that's very important to emphasize, whether it's through writing or through creating it through drawings or different artworks. Just keep in mind, like, embrace your shake. There are no mistakes. The fifth one, share if you want to. It's totally optional. And if people are sharing their pieces, that would be greatly appreciated. But also, if when someone is finishing presenting, maybe we can do like the finger snaps as encouragement. And then the last one being Hozho, simply let's have fun, great time. And so for my workshop, I have a list of materials that I want everyone to bring out: a piece of paper or journal, a pencil or a pen, and bring some markers, coloring pencils, some writing tools that are in ink. And then we'll move on to the first part of this workshop, which is analyzing this little artwork. I wanted to mention Gloria Bigay and her Diné Food Sovereignty Alliance, who inspired me to implement this as a part of the workshop. And so this is taken from Leroy Nelson, who painted this picture, and we like to refer it to as Corn in the Man. And it's also taken out of the Son Bahanet, Story of the Stars activity booklet by NASA and the Navajo Nation Project. And the first questions that I want to ask everyone is, how does this image speak to you? What elements stand out? How does this align with our Diné culture and teachings? So I can give everyone like a few minutes to look at this piece. You can probably type in the chat what you think of this. How does it speak to you? So let me give you a few more seconds. Okay, so I'm going to go first. The way I see this piece, I think that everything's in a circular motion. I think one of the important elements are the different spirals. If you can see the spirals in the foreground, the background, and these different areas surrounding the corn and the man, I think they symbolize our fingerprints, because if you look at our fingers, you know, we have different structures of cells and tissues that align everything to the elements that we see in this picture, like the 4 or 6 sacred mountains. And with these spirals, as you can see, a lot of them, they could move counterclockwise, which could resemble turning back to ancestral knowledge and lineage, or moving forward with time in the clockwise direction. And also another thing to point out here is how everything is harmonized, the elements in nature in Hozho. There's duality between the female and male elements, bringing life to the person in the center. I'm not too sure if I can read everyone's comments, but if there are comments, maybe we can do that at the end. And then the second part of this, this activity, I wanted to move along to the fundamental laws of the Diné, which is taken out of the fundamental laws of the Diné from the transcript. I believe it's on Title 1. And just going through quickly through this little poetic statement, I'll just read along and you can follow along. We, the Diné, the people of the Great Covenant, are the image of our ancestors as we are created in connection with all creation, the holy people ordained through songs and prayers that earth and universe embody thinking, water and the sacred mountains embody planning, air and the variegated vegetation embody life, fire, light, and the offering sites of variegated sacred stones embody wisdom. These are the fundamental tenets established. Thinking is the foundation of planning. Life is the foundation, wisdom. Upon our creation, these were instituted within us, and we embody them. Accordingly, we are identified by our Diné name, our clan, our language, our life way, our shadow, our footprints. Therefore, we were called the Holy Surface People. From here, growth began and the journey proceeds. Different thinking, planning, life ways, languages, beliefs, and laws appear among us. But the fundamental laws placed by the holy people remain unchanged. Hence, as we were created with living soul, we remain Diné forever. So in this piece, I want everyone to just reflect on what words stand out and what could these small pieces mean to you. And I think this poetic statement, along with the corn of the man picture, really relate to one another. And I think it's really powerful in many ways. And how I see this, like in the lines, we are created in connection with all creation. I think of the elements like earth, fire, water, and earth, fire, and water, and how these elements commingle with one another and how they create us as, Diné beings. And then the second part that stood out to me was the line, "Upon our creation, these were instituted within us, and we embody them." I think of this line as very important to know as a reminder for myself, because I tend to forget that we Diné people, or native indigenous people, or people in general, we have so much culturally rich knowledge that's embedded within us. And this is what should help us heal during times of hardship. It is through writing therapy, art therapy, songs and prayers therapy, gardening therapy, and all different kinds of therapies that could help heal our wounds. Okay, and now moving along, here I have Safan's example of her analysis of what she thought of the corn and the man, and also the fundamental laws of the Diné. She said, "I believe that the corn and the man image represents the essence of Navajo culture. Everything within nature and in ourselves makes us who we are as Diné people. The many things that make us who we are can be our name, culture, language, our footprints, the food we eat, and the air we breathe, and the land where we live." And now, time for the fun part. So for everyone, I want you all to focus on the prompt: write or draw your stories through art. And so here in the upper right-hand corner, I have the templates of the corn and the man, and maybe you can use that as an example for yourself. Maybe draw yourself in the center and draw different elements that possibly help you heal yourself during this pandemic. And also include, the weaknesses, what weaknesses you overcame, and how did you overcome it? And then also express, how can you express your emotions through colors? So here I have on the other side of the screen a little template of these colors and what they mean. Like, for example, if someone were to use a lot more green in their artwork, it could mean they feel fresh, they feel new, they feel harmonized, they feel balance in nature, beauty and peace. So I want to give people a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so, to do your little artwork or writing. And maybe at the end of this, or end of all of the presentations, we can share. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
I have a question. This is Juanita. So we just draw a picture right now?
Yeah. So you would draw yourself in the center if you want to do a drawing, and maybe include the elements like spirals, for example, that helped heal you during the pandemic. And also take control of the colors you use. If you don't feel like you're up to drawing, you can also write down, maybe use the template of the fundamental laws of the Diné people as an example for your piece.
Okay, thank you.
I think I will give another minute to everyone. I know it's not that long, but if you want to continue this another time, please feel free to. I'm going to be moving along in a few more seconds. And also, if you want these slides for your own use, I can also provide these. Okay, I'm going to move along. So here I have an example of Safon Hardy, who did her piece in a digital art form. And she analyzed her piece as, this image of myself is a depiction of things that make me me. I have had ups and downs this past year. The color blue often represents feelings of sadness, and I struggled a lot with anxiety and depression. Orange can resemble or can represent feelings of hope and happiness. Despite how blue my beginnings was, I'm glad I was able to become stronger as a person and continuously move forward toward more days of hope and happiness. Some of the things that definitely contribute to my happiness include my cats, my friends and family, and my art. I surround myself with things that make me happy to keep my mind and heart healthy. So I really like this beautiful piece that Safon made. I know that in other workshops that I've conducted, many pieces were turning out like this. And I really appreciate how, every participant analyze what they see in their piece through colors, through symbolisms, and also overcoming negatives within their lives and turning it into positives. Okay, and I believe that's the end of my slide. Thank you. If you really like this presentation and want more presentations like this, feel free to reach out to me at Kyle@paintaddictartist.com, and also my website. If you just type in like Paint Attic Artist, my website link should be popping up. And I believe that's all. Okay, thanks everyone.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. You may continue to draw and write, and we'll share when this session is over altogether. So next on the agenda is Cecilia Kiano. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Oh, yeah, Shana Rex. Yeah, and you get the or the chick edo shedna ya, Kiana Gorman Dashanido, Adona and Slinigi Todich eating Shlon, Totsani dan Linigi Edashaja, Ado Kiani Edashachedo, my deskiji dashanale. Quat a dehosis dollars, do Telana Holia Danasha. So hello everybody, my name is Kiana Gorman. I am from Salina Springs, Arizona, which is in between Chinle and Pinon, close to the Baloca Mesa. I grew up there, and today I'm honored to be here with you all today to talk a little bit about Hannet Ben Hitzil. And just to sort of preface my intentions with sort of this conversation that I want to have about Hannet Ben Hitzil is the neck Achana and Tinigi. In our Dana teachings, we're taught to, maintain beauty, to walk in beauty. And this is passed on to us from Astanat changing woman through our and ceremonies, the beauty way ceremony. So an important aspect of maintaining Hozho and walking in beauty is that sometimes we must resist or push back against the negativities. So hunger, sickness, misfortune, and so the way I was taught is hunger, sickness, misfortune, thirst, all age are things that we work against. We push back against those things because they are things that impact our lives and our families, and sometimes they impact us negatively. And so what I really want to talk about is basically, for this sort of writing session, I want to focus on like the ways we fight back against those negativities in our lives, and within our communities, within our families. So I do have like a few questions to sort of like ponder about a little bit. I'll go ahead and put these questions in the chat, as well as like a little bit of my description. So first and foremost, how do we reconcile with our own shortcomings? What ways do we maintain Hozho in our communities and families? What stories in your family do you refer to keep strong? So what teachings from your family, your elders, your community push you forward? So I'll go ahead and put these questions in the chat. It'll just be a moment. And just go ahead and let me know if you guys can't see it. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can, Kiana.
Okay, thank you. So just think about these questions a little bit. I'll give you guys a little bit of time to go ahead and write in a journal that you might have, and then I'll just share a little bit about, just a little bit about my own story and how I've been able to like apply it to my life. So I'll go ahead and give everybody, let's see, is like 5 minutes enough time for everybody to write a little bit? So we'll go ahead and go with 5 minutes. If folks need more time, we can go ahead and adjust accordingly. But I'll go ahead and give you guys about like 5 minutes to go ahead and write a little bit about these questions and your response to it, your thoughts about it. So I'll go ahead and give you guys some time to do that right now. Okay. Hello again, everyone. Has everybody had a chance to think about those questions a little bit? Or do folks need just a little bit more time? I saw some amazing responses in the chat. So if it's fine with everybody, I'll go ahead and just begin sharing a little bit about what I wrote. And so, yeah. So my just a little bit of background of like where I'm coming from, where I'm sort of like speaking from, or this perspective that I'm offering is I am a very proud non-binary queer DNFM. And so there have been a lot of things that I've always had to resist and push back against, including, you know, some of the examples that I offered of like, you know, hunger, thirst, stuff like old age, misfortune, etc. And so the way I navigate my life is with the teachings of my mother and my masana. And so something that my mom always says is like, when she's sort of confronted with something difficult, maybe sort of like a fork in the road or something of the sort. My mom always says a specific phrase. She says, "Oh, yin." And that's something that I think back to a lot when I come to my own sort of shortcomings and when I have to sort of confront things in my own life. And so it's a bit difficult for me to translate yin Italian, but the way I sort of understand it and the way my mom uses it is like to sort of remember one's own, you know, being, but also just to remember that one is supposed to be like patient, sacred, and just supposed to carry oneself in a certain way. And so the ways that I have sort of maintained Hozho in my own life is by citizen. Usually I use, you know, Tchadetin, Beshistagi. And so as I believe somebody also mentioned in the chat, you know, putting corn pollen out in the morning. But of course, there are things, which is specifically what this workshop is about, things that aren't necessarily material, but really sort of help guide yourself and your families and the community overall. And something that I've used a lot in my life is a joba. A job and remembering to be sympathetic and be empathetic with others, to be kind to others, and you know, specifically in one thing that I really had to sort of confront and overcome was going to college, because as I mentioned, I grew up in Salina Springs, and Salina is very different from a much bigger college city. And so with that journey that I took and I'm still taking, you know, there has been a lot of shortcomings that I have had to confront, such as exams, such as homesickness, such as things like hunger or sickness, or just, you know, being ill, etc. And in some of those moments, you know, I would question myself, like, you know, and because something that my mom and my family would always repeat to me every time I came across these shortcomings or these forks in the road, they would always tell me, and they would specifically refer to some stories within our family. You know, my mom would say things like, you know, "Shi'ato ishkhata shi'ato le khajo ionza de oltkhako tahtiyada." and specifically talking about her own experience with like not being able to have access to education, not being able to get really just sort of an education in anything. And she would always tell me, you know, you're sort of covering new ground, you're going to a different place, a new place. And none of us really know how to navigate that place because none of us has ever really had to go through that experience and had to confront those things. And so those stories help me stay positive. They help me stay strong. They help me in specific situations to keep motivation. And so thinking about that just a little bit more, does anybody want to share their response? I heard like, I think there's time for like one person to share. Would anybody like to share? Let's see. So let me just go read the ones in the chat. Getting up early in the morning makes you feel and look young. Also, you'll have many valuable blessings when you greet early dawn. The power of positivity in praying early in the morning with corn pollen. And last one, laughter is one of the best medicines for me. When I am talking to my children, particularly since they are grown and out of the house and cannot be with each other during this difficult time, we always try to spend time talking about shared experiences that were fun and remind us of better times. When we laugh together, the distance of shortened and the pain of loneliness and missing them is relieved. Thank you for sharing that, Stacey. And I agree, laughter is one of the best medicines. I always love coming back home, especially during the holidays, and participating in like ceremonies and cookouts and just sharing stories and sharing laughter has always been something that has been very comforting for me. So thank you. And so I'm not entirely sure how much time I have left. I'm sorry, because I do want to do one more activity. Shana, Rex, how much time do I have left?
Well, according to the schedule, your time is up, but we'll go ahead and give you 5 more minutes.
Okay. So one last thing that I would like everyone to give a try is to, I'll go ahead and turn off my camera for this. So wherever you're at, write in, if you could, you know, take just a moment to close your eyes and just sort of think about the questions that I'm about to ask. When you think of strength or resilience or perseverance, what comes to who or what or where, when, what specific people or events or stories, teachings come to mind? How does that image come to you during times of struggle? So I'll give you guys a moment to think a little bit about the first question that I asked. So when you think of perseverance, I'll go ahead and write it in the chat. Okay, great. So, sorry, I know that was just a little short, but because I only have 5 minutes, I'll go ahead and just add a little bit to, not add, but to just sort of go over that question. So for me specifically, what comes to mind is a place, that place being, Salina, where I grew up. And the reason why it is a place instead of a person or people or, a specific event, the reason why specifically that place reminds me of perseverance and positivity is because my family has lived there for generations. So I don't necessarily see the landscape as like a physical, not just a physical place, but I also see it as a place that is connected through generations, a place that is built by prayers, songs, so many different stories that could go on for decades, and it's a place that has grounded me, has reminded me of who I belong to, which is the land, and what that sort of entails. So that's just a little bit about me. Maybe towards the end of the workshop, we might have a little bit of time to share a little bit more. So thank you guys for so thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share and speak with y'all. And yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Yat Eshitsula. Thank you for your presentation. When these young people get going, they can go all day. We're learning so much from all of you. Kadeya, we'll have Dwight join us. He's with us by phone. Setselenan. Dwight, go ahead.
Dwight, you may be muted. Please check your mute.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dwight, but there's a lot of feedback.
We're having a meeting right now, actually. Oh, yeah.
She'eya Zanaba, Arita Martin Unisha, Sanabetli Nishle, Nakabashishin, Tabadashinale, Adene Deshiche, Totagai Nasha. Hello, everyone. My name is Zanaba. I was supposed to be presenting with my sisters today. I'm the oldest of 4 daughters, and we're from the community of Totlagai. But we just got done sending off my second sister to her volleyball state playoff game. So we met them and had some signs ready to send them off to Tohatchi's volleyball team to Socorro, New Mexico. So we wish them well and safe travels. I graduated from Tohatchi High School in 2015, and my senior year of high school is when I joined Rexley Gym with the NCHO, Navajo Community Health Outreach. And then from there, I moved into Colorado Springs, and I graduated from the Colorado College with my bachelor's degree in Southwest Studies, with a major in Southwest Studies and a double minor in Indigenous Studies and Film Studies. And I remained a member of NCHO, and we transitioned to the Next Generation Leadership La Casa Rojo Navajo Nation site. And now I am in my 4th and final semester of my Master of Arts program. So I will be graduating in May with my graduate master's degree in Native American Studies with UNM in Albuquerque. So today, my session, I did this a letter writing session with our group before, and I kind of just wanted to extend that to our event today. But yeah, my younger sisters are Shandine Bot. She is in her undergrad currently at the University of Colorado Springs, but we've all been home for over a year during this pandemic to stay safe. My second sister is Najana Bot. She is a junior at Tohatchi High School, but she's also doing a dual enrollment program in UNM Gallup. And so she'll graduate with her associate's degree at the same time she gets her high school diploma. And then our baby sister, Atsaba, she is a 6th grader in Tohatchi mid school. So everyone, if you can get out your pencils, your papers, and if anyone has quick access to any stickers, maybe washi tape, markers, anything arts and crafts wise, you can start searching for that. So that was my introduction, and we'll go ahead and jump into the letter writing portion. Let me reshare my screen here. Let's see. Okay. And let me just try to monitor the chat as well. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'll monitor the chat box as well. So my session is titled Ba'ahiye Nisin, I am grateful for, and we will be focusing on gratitude for today, or the session. And everyone, if you could just take a few minutes to start making a list of people in your life who you are grateful for. And that could be people you live with, that could be people who are far away from you. It could be our relatives or friends who have already journeyed to the spirit world. It could be a letter to someone in the future. Even if you want to do a letter to your future self 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And what we want to focus on is I've been dealing myself with a lot of mental and emotional health issues. And so a lot of the elders that I meet, not just from our Diné tribe, but from other tribes across Indian country and around the world, they always say, think about everything in your life you're grateful for. And so I've been doing that, making a list. And there's some bullet journal YouTubers who include in their bullet journals every day, write 3 things you're grateful for. But specifically for this session, we're going to focus on people. And then while you're making that list, you want to go ahead and you can start with one for now, but you'll choose one from your list. And then when you're going to go ahead and get another blank piece of paper ready, and we're going to do a letter written to this person you've selected. And if you want, you can incorporate Navajo language, the Nepazad. Your greeting could say Yate, your conclusion. Instead of saying sincerely, you can say Hagone or Hakushila. And if you know how to write your date in Navajo, you can do that in the top corner. But yeah, you just, again, before you start writing your letter, the same place where you made the bullet points of that person, once you choose that person, go ahead and start making another list of a bullet point list next to their name and start listing things about this person, why you're grateful for them. And if it's your mom, if it's your dad, if it's a sibling, if it's your che, your masane, your nalis, a cousin, it could be anyone. This letter is just to someone. We'll focus on one for now, but you could always do everyone in your life you're grateful for later. And just if it's a person that's not with you right now, just something, just like anything you would want to tell them to make their day, to let them know that they're very important to you, to let them know that you're thinking of them, to let them know you include them in their prayers. And this is, I think, a really humbling experience to do. And so Rex is my clan son, and so he recommended trying a gratitude focused letter writing session. So that's why we're focusing on gratitude for this session. And even if you want to do this activity another time, you don't have to necessarily write it down on a piece of paper. You could just say it out loud. And even if you don't want to do an actual letter per se, you can do poetry out of it. If you want to say you're thankful for non-human beings, non-human species, it could be you're thankful for your pets, thankful for our land, Nepekea, thankful for waking up to our sunrise every morning. And I don't know who follows the moon cycles and all of that for our gardening relatives. But last night was our full moon. It was a worm moon. So yesterday we were focusing on, showing gratitude to our earthworms in our gardens. And we fixed up their house nicely and trying to expand them as well. And thinking about, as worms, no one really thinks about how big their impact is on the earth, and especially for gardeners. So you could I might do a poem about worms. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I didn't have enough time to find a picture I wanted to show how to do the letter body, but I'll just do bullet points here. So again, you want to do your introduction. Right before that, you can do your greeting. And it doesn't have to be limited to Navajo language or English language. If we have any other multicultural guests on our call, feel free to use any other languages you want. And just real quick, Ceci or Rex, what's my end time?
You've got plenty of time. It's supposed to be ending at 2:10, but you can do 2:15.
2:15? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have about 5 more minutes. And I don't know if anyone else, who else on the call likes writing letters still, but if you Google a TED Talk, there's so many videos they have about letter writing, and it's becoming like a lost art. And that's one of the videos I shared with our group before we had this event. But I love snail mail. For those of you that don't know what snail mail is, it is paper letters, handwritten letters or typed letters, not emails, not electronic text messages, nothing to do with technology. And so I had if you are interested, there's a lot of activities online if you want to get a pen pal. And pretty much a pen pal, it could be someone you know or someone you don't know. And the only way you two communicate is through snail mail, through paper mail. And this is a fun way to get to know people. And it really, I think it sends a stronger message than just sending someone a message through Facebook or a text message. But when you receive a letter, it's from someone you know or a stranger. It's a really nice feeling that someone took the time to think about you, took the time to find the letter, to find the envelope, to get the stamp, and then to take the time to get their thoughts in their head and get it down on the paper. So I think whoever you choose to deliver your gratitude letter to, I think it'll make their day, and then possibly you can work out how to keep that letter going, that letter chain. So maybe they'll write you something back saying, thank you, I'm grateful for you too. And there's so many things you can talk about in a letter, not just gratitude. But I hope this sparks some people's interest in letter writing. And you can also get really creative and artsy with letters. You can do calligraphy. You can, like I said, use your markers, your stickers, your washi tape to decorate your letter really nicely. You can also find a nice envelope, send some stickers to whoever you're sending your letter to. I've seen people tie a nice piece of yarn or string around their envelope and then use a wax seal with some dried flowers, and you can get really creative with letter writing. So I would just recommend looking up creative letter writing on Google, and there's so many images and videos to help you all. Let's see, I'm checking the chat. I don't think I see anything. Yeah, but just some more things to share. If you need some ideas about what you're grateful for a person, you could say you're grateful for maybe the way they treat you. You're grateful for their attitude and their good behavior. You could say you appreciate, if it's your mom, let's say, for example, your ma, you could say, I'm thankful for you bringing me into this world, taking care of me, cooking my meals, helping me get to school, supporting me. And then we have a comment saying to my relatives who have gone before me. So if there's someone, a relative that you're missing, you could also write the letter to them, and you could keep it, or perhaps burn it in a fire and burn some cedar and sage with that and send that message to the spirit world. I've done that before once with my my late Che. He was murdered over 10 years ago, who was shot and killed to death in Grants along with his elderly friend. So he was taken from me and my sisters when I was in mid-school age. And, you know, there's so much I wanted to say to him, so much I wanted to learn from him. And the last place I saw him alive was at one of my volleyball games. So even things, this will help with your memories. If there's something, you could reach out to someone, a long lost friend, a distant relative, saying, hey, remember this time we were at this family gathering? Do you remember this happened? there's this, it's anything you can put into letter writing, whatever you choose to do. Don't feel like you have any limits. Don't feel like you can't make any grammar mistakes. It's fine to make mistakes. You don't have to make this perfect. And again, just I think the main important thing is just to write from your heart and your mind and your spirit, and just have fun and enjoy it. So we're at 2:15. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And if we have time for questions later, I'll be here on the call. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And it's good to see a lot of familiar faces on the call, as well as some new faces. But I hope you continue to follow our NGLN La Casa Roja Navajo Youth Group. We have our social media, and there's a lot of activities we do with the public. So we hope to get more youth involved.
We're doing that. Letter writing is not an easy thing to do. Lost art. Her younger sister at Tsapa, I'm supposed to be writing her a letter. I start and then I stop and then I add something else and I stop. My handwriting is no good, so I have to start all over, and it's like writing a letter on a computer where you just type it out and press the touch button, to go button, and then it's there. So it is a hard thing to do. Na kunna panaho aton eya to white loopy. She's having a technical problems with calling in, and so we apologize on his behalf. He won't be able to meet with us today. But just to let you know, Dwight is legally blind. So what he's dealing with now in terms of technical problems and what we're dealing with, he has to deal with that on a daily basis. And part of he has an awesome workshop teaching you how to use your other senses and block off certain senses and then just tap into certain ones to make you sort of experience a part of his daily life. And he's made the most of that life so far. So we will go on to our next presenter, the Honorable Laura Tohi, who is the Poet Laureate for the Navajo Nation. He will speak to us about reading and the importance of rhetorical sovereignty and what that means to be the Poet Laureate, and maybe share a reading with us, one or two of her poems. Maybe Cato then will do the open mic. So I hope all of you are still writing and that you'll be willing to share at that time. So Shadda.
Oh, yat nolswa shik dashadane she Laura Tohi dash Janetsana Bilinish Latwada Bashin Johna Etwalana dash Chedoma Ideshki Dashanella Shema Laura Florence will yende Shetja Benson Tohi will yende a coat talker and lean down. Kade Ashishan the Nashnish Arizona State the Banashnish and they are the professor in the English department gone there. Kade Shishananish Holanda Banasha Shananish Hayu. Even though I'm retired, I still have lots of work. So Silla Rex for inviting me to share some of what I do as a writer and as the Poet Laureate of the Navajo Nation, for which I am very grateful to have that role and that honor to represent our own people, our Navajo Nation. So thank you for that. And it's good to see so many faces. And the young people, I encourage you to continue what you're doing. You had some very nice presentations. And I want to get your email addresses because I also am on the board of this Native Indigenous program, and we're looking to give some fellowships away to young people. So those of you that presented today, I'd like your email address. Maybe you could put it in the chat and I'll be able to get it like that. Okay. So Shatsila asked me to talk about the importance of writing and reading. And this is a subject that I love very much. I could probably talk all day on this, but I don't have that much time. So I think I have, 15, 20 minutes? Okay. So I grew up at Crystal, and I started out, I was 5 years old, and my mother worked at the school. I grew up in a community and also a time when we were isolated from TV. And of course, there was no Wi-Fi or computers. It was just my family and my brothers, my older brothers and my younger brothers. And I had a sister too. And there was not much for us to do. In fact, this pandemic that we're in right now, it feels like I already had practice when I was growing up, because we didn't do a lot as far as going out into the outside of the res. We went to Gallup to shop, went to movies, and went to Albuquerque sometimes. But most of the time we were home. We went fishing, and my brothers and I played together a lot. And the way I filled my time was when I got to school in first grade, we were given the Dick and Jane books. And those books are very easy to read. And the teacher went through and showed us, the alphabet and how you put these alphabets together to make words. And then we had to start reading the Dick and Jane books. And I picked it up very easily. And I read ahead. I kind of taught myself to read after I learned how English worked. And then she put me in charge of tutoring my classmates. And so I used to do that, sit there with my classmates. And of course, during that time in the late 50s, we were in the boarding schools where we were told not to speak our language and we were being punished for it. And so if my classmates were caught speaking Navajo, I would have to get back into the book and say, let's read this, and so they wouldn't have to be punished for it. So I really felt like I had to save my classmates from that punishment. But for me, reading was also a way for me to leave the reservation. Not because it was a horrible place. And when I think about it now, I think I had a happy childhood growing up at Crystal and among my relatives, because we had a lot of things that we did together as a family. And we had horses, we had cattle, sheep. And I feel like my childhood was not terrible. I feel like I had a good childhood surrounded by, my relatives that raised me. So for me, when I was growing, I since we didn't have television and I enjoyed reading, my mother thankfully saw that in me, and she used to take me to the public library at Gallup, and she'd let me check out a whole stack of books, and I read fairy tales and I brought them home, and it's all I would do is read. And my brothers, they had comic books and I read those too, but they didn't always like me to touch their comic books, or funny books as they were called back then. So I always was around reading, but I didn't write anything. And the really strange thing about me was when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a writer when I was about 10, 11 years old, but I never read a book by a Native American author. It wasn't until, I went to high school and actually in college, I read my first book written by a Native American author. And so I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know how you did it. I didn't know you have to publish and, you have to do all these things. And so I just left it alone until maybe the second or third year in college. I started writing these poems in secret. And I just showed them to one of my instructors, but, nothing much came of it. But it wasn't until after I graduated from college and I started writing. And that was when I met this very famous writer, Rudolph Anaya. He was a professor at UNM when I was a student there. And I went to go see him. I wanted to take his class, and I had to talk him into letting me get into his class. And then the first assignment was to write a story that began with "Once upon a time." He said, any story. And I remember hearing all these stories in my family all my life. And the first story I could think of was the one that my mother used to tell us in the car when we were driving to Gallup to go shopping for our groceries. And it was about these two brothers, this brother and sister. They were human, but they turned into prairie dogs because of their parents' neglect. And some of you have probably heard the story. So that's the one she told me, and that's the one I wrote. My teacher really liked it, and he said, I'll help you get it published. And the first time I sent it out, it was rejected. But he said, don't give up. He said, I'll help you edit it, and then you will send it out again. And I was published a second time. I had it sent out. So those were the encouraging ways that I got started. I had a good teacher that supported me and that was interested in my work. And then that's when I realized, and my instructor, Mr. Anaya, told me, he said, why don't you write stories that come from your community? And that was when this light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, all this time I've been listening to all these stories, and I never realized that these were stories that I could write about. These were stories that came from my community, my family. And that's what I started doing, was writing stories from that. And eventually, I got published, and I published my first chapbook. It was about rain and about water. And I also publish other books. So I don't have a lot of time, I know. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I've done in my writing. So let me see if I can. I'm not very techy, but I'm going to try, and I hope I get this right. Yep, here it is. Okay. So here's, first of all, I'm just going to go through some of these books. Here's a picture of Professor Emeritus Dr. Evangeline Parsons Yazzie, who's written Navajo language books, and she's written 4 novels and an award-winning children's book. This is one of our own relatives, and I have just 2 of the covers from her book. And what's really powerful about her work is that she's been writing about the long walk, about a family that goes to the long walk, and she's writing her novels in Navajo and English. And this is a beautiful way to tell a story. And this is all a collaboration from her and the people that she knew or that she knows that told her these stories. So she's writing these stories about that time. And of course, because it was a long walk, there's a lot of sadness and grief and death and tragedy that happens. But there's also this love and this caring among the family and the characters that she writes about in that book. So I'm going to show you another one. This is The Good Rainbow Road. And I'm sorry, like I said, I'm not very techy. I couldn't get the image turned around, but this is a book written by Simon Ortiz. And he took stories from the Acoma people, and he wrote this children's book called The Good Rainbow Road. And I know maybe some of you are interested in writing children's books. And so this is an example of what he did with his book. It's illustrated by one of the Michael Acapa. And this is another one that I wrote. This is called Code Talker Stories. I interviewed 20 of the last living code talkers. My father was one, but I didn't get to interview him because he passed away before I could. But again, this story, this oral history book, I wanted it to be in Navajo and English. So some of the code talkers orated their story in Navajo, and it's all been transcribed and translated into English. So these are stories that are coming from our own community. These are stories that tell about who we are, our history, what we believe in, what our philosophy is. And they're very important for us because this is who we are. This is telling what we believe in. This is telling about ourselves, like the code talkers talked about why they enlisted and what happened to them when they were there, and what they experienced when they were in the war. And I never knew what my father did in World War II because he never told us. He never told my family. And he only mentioned one time that he was a code talker. But when I heard these stories by the code talkers, I realized what my father did when he was in the Marines during World War II. So this was kind of a personal project for me. And then this one is called No Love Is No, Love Is Not Dead. This is an anthology. It's a collection of poems written by people from all over the world about love. And the editor, he asked me to submit a poem in Navajo. And I'm just starting to write poems in Navajo, so I submitted a short one, and it was Navajo and English. And these poems have come from all over the world, and I was very honored to be part of this world collection of what love is and how we define it, and the joys and sorrows of love. So that just came out. And then in 2019, the same editor asked me to write a poem in Navajo because he was putting together a collection of poems about endangered languages. And as we know, our language and many native languages all over the world are in danger of extinction. So he put these poems together again from all over the world. There people are represented, and I was again, asked to be one of the poets represented. So I wrote a poem in Navajo and translated into English for this. So that's where my new work is taking me. And then some of you may have heard of this new book called The Diné Reader. It's just came out. It's an anthology of Navajo literature. And this book has 35 of our poets in this book. It's representing some of the early Navajo writers, including myself, Lucy Tapahanso, and then the ones that are coming after us, and the more of the younger writers are also in this book. And some of you might be interested in this book as if you're teachers, because it also has in their lesson plans and not lesson plans, but how you can use this book in your literature classes. Some of the poems are written in Navajo, and many of them are in English. This is going to be a very important book, and I think it's a very important contribution to not only Navajo literature, but world literature. This is, our own nation of writers contributing. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention. And Celissa, can you read a poem too? And so I said, okay, so this is the poem that I chose. But first of all, I want to say also, even though my family, as I mentioned, were a big influence in becoming a writer, because I was always hearing stories around me. You know, we'd get into the car and my mother would tell stories about our relatives. And I remember we'd be driving downtown Gallup and she'd say, "Oh, there goes your uncle." And then she'd tell some story about him. And then, "Oh, there's your grandma." And then she'd tell some story about her. And I was always hearing these stories about people in my family. So that was my first influence as a writer. And then I mentioned there were comic books. I liked the way images and stories were represented in that book, you know, and you could see what Superman was doing and when he was flying, and, you know, you had Lois Lane holding her hand, they were flying over the earth or something. I just thought that was so interesting that a human being could do things like that and be these heroes and have superpowers. And then the next thing I really liked were fairy tales. And I think fairy tales for me, they were like my time machine, because I read fairy tales from all over the world, like from Russia and Europe. And I could go there and read about these people that lived in different times. They dressed differently. They had different kind of stories. And I just really loved that. I was able to go there and be part of that, you know, just by reading. And then eventually I started reading Nancy Drew, the mystery series. And I was a teenager, early teenager, and I read almost all her books. And I loved all those stories in there. And I just liked that this was a young girl who was a detective. And then later on, I had a teacher who always read to us after lunch. And he used to read us Edgar Allan Poe stories. You know, this is an American writer. He's one of the first horror writers. And he read The Telltale Heart to us. And I just looked forward to that every day because he was telling us stories. And then later on, I discovered poets like Pablo Neruda and the images of poets. And then there's a lot of American poets also that I like. So these are all my influences. And then I'm going to probably start running out of time. So I'm going to read to you my poem called Moth Madness. During the summer, I used to spend some part of the summer with Shanali at Glentohi Woliende. She lived down at Coyote Canyon. And this is the part that I always really loved, that she was there. And we had horses, and we used to go every day. My dad and my cousin and I, we looked for our cattle, and we got to ride horses all day long. And I loved horses. And then in the evening time, because my Shanella was a weaver, my cousin and I had to help her clean the wool that she used to turn into the skeins of wool for her weaving. So this is part of that. This is that poem. It's called Moth Madness. And then, you know, and she would always start to tell us things about life, about how we should conduct ourselves as girls. And she'd just tell us things that we had to think about. So this is part of what I mean about having a happy childhood, is that I had relatives like this that told me stories. And so I've written things about them. Moth Madness. Moths circle the kerosene lamp on the floor that sheds a dim light on our night work. My cousin and I keep carting the woolly clumps, twigs and dirt that clung to the sheep from their wanderings among sagebrush and thistle drop into our laps. We card and card to transform them into layers of soft clouds for Nulla's spindle. Each ahi, says Nulla, almost in a whisper, like she was afraid to stir the name, like the name might release something formed from night. Each ahi. The word flutters in the shadows and cautions against all that is unbalanced in the glittering world. the reckless, the violators, the amoral, evil floating all around that must be righted with songs and prayers. Bahatzit, she exclaims, no longer whispering, harsh caution against a suicidal jump into the fire. I would learn what it means to yearn for the fire burning in a stranger, the Kuda Fudra that matched my own moth madness. Nulla's spindle tilts like the earth's axis. She places against her thigh, spins intensely as she transforms clouds of wool into layers upon layers of streaks for her canvas that becomes her world. She calls the earth and sky. She calls stories of female mountains. She calls stories of male mountains. She calls geometric designs to her to balance the world against the moth madness. Kuda, a
Ahehe shade. Thank you. Yeah, it's what what's known to have none yet the whole each. Thank you so much for your participation, your willingness to be an example for young people who are on this show and others as well. That's what we have sisters for. Put them to work. We'll go ahead and open this to open mic. Aishin, you've had several workshops now. Although you guys were probably working on some of that while listening in as well. We'll have an open mic for those who would like to share. We will give you time and reflect. Only if you want to share. Don't forget, it could be in any forms of expression. Make sure it's you write your truth, tell your truth, who you are. There are no mistakes. Be happy and enjoy. No criticism. Those are some of the guiding writing principles in Navajo. So, Sonia, we'll turn this over to you so you can have people share what they have written or done so far. And I guess I'll go ahead and start by setting an example. This is for you Navajos who speak Navajo and for you. How would you say this? Navajo Christians? This is something that I've been working on with some people and others. It's a song. I do a lot of singing when I'm traveling, and I mostly sing with a Navajo tune and a Navajo. This is something that already in existence or started the streets, just to give you an idea. So here it is. 这次真个后生好了个，那也好一20也被也真也养生啊那个，这次真个后生的也谁啥的也了。这次真个后生好了个，那也是次真这些个后来个，是次真个后生的也谁呀？是可是这些个后生一个个，是次真个后生我的也是呀给这些个后来个。是呀，这次真个后生的也是给这些个后来个，这次真个后生的也是那的个，这也是后来个，这次真个后生的个是za了个都这些别za那个来个是za那个来个呗，这次真个后生的。谁也杀了也了，这次这个后生的也谁也杀了也了，这次这个后生的也谁也杀了也了，这次这个后生不能能。You know, we have relatives who are Navajo traditional, and we have relatives who are Navajo Christians, and they always had a difficult time integrating this two stuff. So I'm trying to find ways to say it could be done, you know. Why do you have to listen to use I guess, Northern European tunes to express your Christian spirituality? You need can access it with Navajo. So that's when we talk about the pandemic and how do we learn to get together and help one another know from this, what our children are telling us about. So I'm working on more songs like that, so should be interesting. Thank you. What for you guys to share now? Sonia, you're in charge.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Mr. Jim has stated, we're going to open this up to the open mic. So for those of you that are viewing on our Zoom session, if you would like to share anything, it can be a song, it can be a poem, writing of your own, you can now turn on your cameras and your mic and share with us. We have Ceci Lewis right now who will share hers. If anybody else is interested, please let me know in the chat. Thank you. Ceci, go ahead.
This is a very short piece, but it was inspired by Keanu's session on when he asked us of who or what we think of when we think of perseverance. Dixie, when I think of perseverance, I think of you. Your brilliance shines through as I watch you identify, name, and polish the beauty you find in others. Through your strength and vision, we are able to become what we need to be. Thank you.
Let's hear from the First Lady. No pressure.
Yes. So I think so the check is going to and so I was asking about the treasurer's name on there and he said we
Rex.
Yeah.
I won't share work, but I can talk for a little bit if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Rex, Otto, yeah, Laura, thank you so much for your presentations. Yat A, She, Matthew J. Skisin, She, Sanajin, Nishle, Tkobahan Bashes Chin, Skachini Dasha Che, Do Torkojan Dashanella. Hello, everybody. My name is Jake. I'm an assistant professor at Tenet College. I teach English, creative writing, and literature at Tenet College. I'm originally from Vanduagan, New Mexico. And so I'm happy to be back and teaching at Tenet College. I'm also a poet. I know Rex's work really well, and I know, of course, Laura, Dr. Laura Tohi's work as well, and all the other Navajo writers, Lucy Tapahanso, Shoan Bitsui, Orlando White, so many to name, Amber McCrary. There's a lot of work happening right now in creative writing. And it's been a goal of mine and a goal of one of my friends and colleagues, Mr. Lemanuel Loli, trying to help mentor and help guide our up and coming writers as well. So I'm really glad that this is happening. Thank you so much to the organizers. I just wanted to let you all know a few opportunities are available if you are interested in creative writing and you're interested in writing in general, whether it's poetry, short stories, novels, essays, nonfiction essays, journalism, things like that. We can always work and help each other as much as possible. So first, Tenet College actually just started a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. And it's been years in the making here at Tenet College by the creative writing faculty here. Mr. Rex Lee Jim was a big part of that. So yeah, thank you for helping us set the tone too. Last spring we had a ceremony with the whole faculty on trying to get this together. So it's finally coming to fruition. On Wednesday, we are actually doing a virtual info session with Tenet College, specifically for the Bachelor of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. So it's a really interesting program, one that we'd be happy to talk with you more. If you are interested, if you are a current Tenet College student, you're more than welcome to just start registering. If you are currently in high school and you're interested, or you work with high school students, you can share this information with them as well. This particular virtual info session is open to anybody. It's at Wednesday, March 31st at 1:30 p.m. It'll be held over the Tenet College Facebook, the Art and Design at Tenet College Facebook page. It'll be live streamed, but you can also register at the link that I put in the chat for the Zoom information. So it'll be like this. You can come see us. And that's happening. And then, of course, every summer, Navajo Technical University hosts what is called the Emerging Dene Writers Institute. It's specifically geared to high school students on the reservation, or students who are interested in learning about writing within a Dene context. And it's held at Navajo Technical University. It's about a week-long program. Both Rex Lee Jim taught there, Laura Tohi taught there, I taught there as myself. Every summer it's held there. And it's going to be happening again this year, and it's a free program for anybody. So if you are interested in that, thank you. But yeah, thank you so much, Akat, for giving me some time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to write anything because I was trying to teach my classes and things like that on the side. But I'm interested in hearing from you all. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Shezha. I appreciate that. We do have quite a few writers here at the Tenet College, so that BFA program will be a wonderful program. Anyone else now inspired to share?
Rex, we have Kiana who had wanted to share.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, hi, hello everybody. I did forget to mention during my initial introduction that I currently use they them pronouns. So for anybody that needs to know my pronouns are they them. And so right now I just really wanted to share with everybody I remember during I shared with you all a little bit about home and how my home reminds me of my family and etc. So I'm going to share a little poem that I wrote. It's written in Navajo, but I also translated it into English. I wrote this when I was feeling really homesick. It was during my first year, my first semester off at college. I attend school on the East Coast. I'm currently in Flagstaff right now because I can't be on campus due to the pandemic. But for like 2 years, I was on campus living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, attending Harvard. And my first semester was my first time ever really leaving home, and it was like so nervous, I was so homesick, and I wrote this out of homesickness. So I'm gonna go ahead and share with you guys. So I'm gonna share the Navajo part first, and if folks are interested, I can also share the English translation. But I have it right here. Okay. Hawanta e hats e sala. Hawanta e honsa ke sala. Hawanta e hajay sa'a. Hawanta e nahat asala. Hawanta e honeshkish satra. Hawan walihiki e hanet alto balindazd e shipini na dobats ahanet ala. And the door sheet open yahagobats anchit do gala. Ado sheet dot open niti ahot e da a. Hale e ya ado hagalent e. Ado e tahani balindazd e. Ado hayaho a. Hawan shin alto hajayet a. Hawan shin alto honsa kes at a. Hawan shin alto hanahat at nila. Akot al soko be ajit edolil. So sorry, I accidentally turned off my camera. But the English translation for that is home is where my placenta is buried. Home is where my thought lies. Home is where my heart sits. Home is where my leadership lies. Home is where my sacred king stands. Home. Home refers to the place that is tied to your cognition. That must be why I have trouble wandering off from it. But I remind myself that I do not wander away from home without reason. And even if I wander off from it, it should always exist within me. Because it is the place where my journey begins, because that's where all my memories reside, because it is the place that raised me. Home is also my heart. Home is also my thought. Home is also my leadership. So it is that no matter where I wander, my home is me. So that is what I shared. I'm going to share that with you guys. And I wrote that, like I said, when I was feeling very homesick. I was missing home so much. It was just like right before I was like headed back home, and I had so many feelings of like, oh my gosh, I miss home. I want to go back home so badly. Like, I'm so tired of like the humidity, so tired of all these concrete buildings. I'm just like, I want to go back home and see like all the canyons